Hi ladies. So this is episode 7. Episode 7 of why your relationships do not work. I'm having lunch here, so bear with me. Yeah, we're having lunch as we do this because it's in between this. I'm doing this video in between my sessions. Yeah. So number 7 is unhealed childhood trauma. Childhood trauma are any unpleasant experiences in your childhood that causes PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, and those things show up in your adulthood. Some causes of childhood trauma could be things like unavailable parents, even emotionally unavailable parents, too many siblings, alcoholic parents, the parents' own trauma that they did not heal, so they pass it over. It can be maybe you had an illness in your childhood, watching a loved one suffer and die. It could be alcoholism, violence, watching maybe one of your parents go through violence, even verbal abuse, all those things. I say I went through trauma in my own way because I felt abandoned, and my dad was also a bit emotionally unavailable. He was present, but we could not connect on that emotional level. And so if you do not heal your childhood trauma, your romantic, if you do not address your childhood trauma, your romantic relationships will address the trauma. Now, the first man you have a relationship with is your parent, is your father. That's the first man who teaches you what a relationship looks like with a man. Yeah. So you keep modeling that relationship until you realize there's a problem here, until you heal that trauma. Then now you can date better. He's the one who teaches you how men talk to women, how women are supposed to respond to men, what women are supposed to take. If you are brought up in a homestead where there's a lot of abuse, you were beaten, you were verbally abused, you were bullied, but you didn't have a response, it's very easy for you to find yourself in a relationship with abusive people, with bullies, with emotionally unavailable men, depending on the relationship that was modeled to you as a child. So, and as a result of those traumas, we develop a lot of negative coping mechanisms. Maybe silence, you don't know how to talk. If you are in a homestead where you cannot talk back to your dad, not even talk back, you cannot reason with him, you cannot talk when he's talking, and he can accuse you of anything, he can call you whatever name he wanted, but you're not allowed to say anything. You find that in your relationships, it's very easy for you to date abusive men, and it's very easy for you to have negative coping mechanisms where when they start that, you automatically shut down. Maybe you start blocking them out of no reason. Maybe you start ghosting them, you start going no contact, or you become extra needy. You really need them to validate to validate you. You become a people pleaser. There's something that happens after childhood trauma. So if you don't heal that trauma, it affects you in your relationships. Every woman marries or dates her father. We say, I don't want a man like my father. But then you will marry or date your father until you realize, by the way, there's something wrong with this relationship. Or you realize, by the way, I think I am dating my father in every relationship. This one, he's shouting at me. This one, he's bullying me. This one is ghosting me. This one is like this. Until you heal that child, that traumatized little girl, until you heal and you actually know better, and you actually start even finding out what a relationship looks like, what a relationship between a man and a woman is supposed to feel like, you will keep dating the same people over and over again. For everybody who comes to my sessions, everyone, and I know my clients will attest to this, for everyone who takes even one of my packages, we have to go through your childhood. We have to look at what your childhood might have done to you, and that's how you're showing up the way you are showing up. So please heal your childhood trauma. It's one of my most healing childhood trauma, and dating and relationships. They are my most requested packages, and of course the full discounted package. So heal, because if, for example, let me bite my food as we continue with this video. I'm having liver and rice. My husband made it, by the way. Isaac made it. Yeah, he's really a good cook. He does very well with food. So, if if you are in relationships, if you are in a childhood where you are not able to talk, about your emotions. You're not able to talk through. You don't know how to have some of these difficult conversations. Then you find yourself in a relationship where when you start having these hard conversations, you're not able to open up, to be vulnerable, to have this, conversation. So it's very easy for you to start blocking them, to start crying when you're saying something, to start yelling, to start banging doors. And those things cannot work in a healthy relationship. Someone who's healthy themselves cannot be in a relationship with someone who, kitu kidogo, something very minor like this happens, and then they are blocking you. They're calling you names. They're showing up to your house unannounced, shouting and crying. Yeah? Heal your trauma. Heal your childhood trauma. What happened to you? What kind of a childhood did you have? What did it do to you? For me, I know one of my attachment style is usually avoidant, and I know where that came from. And so for me, I was very cold. Especially, I would be in those toxic relationships. When they did something to me, I would go cold turkey. Like, I didn't have space for that dialogue. I would even block them. We're having just a kidogo disagreement. I block you for 2 days. I was not able to handle my emotions. And that is one of the things I had to work with in my healing. Yes? Heal. What happened to you? And actually, I've done videos about that, about healing childhood trauma. You can watch them, and you can also come to me for coaching. You don't want to pass your trauma to your children, especially if you have a child. You're here, you're employed, and you have a child. Come so we can work on that. Because one of the causes of childhood trauma, like I said, is your parents' own trauma. If you listen to some of our parents, they'll tell you, I gave you the best life, I gave you an education, and you hear some of the things they talk about in their childhood, and they say, I'm giving you better than I got. But they didn't hear you. So they pass over the anger, they pass over the, the trauma and all that. Some ladies, I have some sessions with some ladies who tell me, Modoni, I'm from a single mother family. My grandma was a single mother. Her sisters were single mothers. My mother and my aunties are single mothers. And I also find myself thinking I will never get married. It runs in the family. It's the trauma, sweetheart. Break the trauma. You're brought up in a single household by your mother. You don't know what it is to have a relationship with a man. No one modeled that to you. So you go into relationships clueless. You go into relationships with that attitude of, we don't marry, we don't get married, our relationships don't last. We come from single mother's household. I'm not saying there's something wrong with that household. I'm saying if you wanna do better, you can. Sawa. So that is the seventh reason why your relationships might not be working. You are a broken person. You still have post-traumatic stress disorder. Heal your trauma so you can date better. We say if you don't address your childhood trauma, your romantic relationships will. Actually, my specialty is in healing trauma. That's what I'm really trained for. But then the reason I focus a lot on relationships is because our unhealed trauma manifests itself in our adulthood relationships. Anyway, bye. See you on episode 8.